So we have to know what this is really about. You know, the battles and the things that we go through, we think it's just about us. Lord, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. Why hasn't things, happened how I wanted them to, and things like that? Like, what's going on? I'm doing all the right things, Lord, what's going on?
In December of 2019, my husband and I were in his office, and I don't remember every detail of the conversation, but at some point I said, I don't think we have much time left, and he agreed. If you're a Christian, you probably know what I mean, and maybe you're feeling it too. Lately, my social media pages have been flooded with end times, imminent rapture videos. But I take Jesus at his word when he said, of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Last week, I started watching a video where the gentleman claimed that since September 11th was the day when Earth was created, he thinks the rapture will take place on September 11th of this year. I take predictions like that with a grain of salt. I didn't listen to the rest of the video, and I have zero idea how he came up with September 11th as being the day of creation. No one knows the exact day or hour Jesus will return, but I do think we're close. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus tells us what to look for, what the signs of the end time will be. There will be wars and rumors of wars, pestilence, famines, earthquakes, false teachers. Do I think the rapture will happen this year? I have no idea. Do I think governments are preparing to explain away the disappearance of millions of people? Yes, I do, and I have my thoughts on how they're going to do it. However, that's not the purpose of this video. But something is coming for all of us. I'm becoming more and more convinced that some of us won't see an actual physical death. There is just too much crazy going on in the world right now. Too many global happenings that do tie into end times prophecy. Wars, natural disasters like hurricanes, drought, earthquakes, floods, and many prophecies that didn't make sense 20 or 50 years ago now all of a sudden make me think, well, that could be how they're going to pull that one off. But I'm not going to get into all of that today. What I want to talk about is being prepared for whatever is coming. It's kind of funny. I used to think I was prepared for anything and everything, any worldly disaster anyway. After 9/11, I went into almost a bunker mode mentality. Water, conservation, food storage, medical supplies, etc. Some of my friends even used to tease me about it. But as I wrote in the opening of my book in April of 2019, my spiritual life was kicked into high gear. And as the months went on, the more I studied and prayed, I felt prepared for anything spiritual that might come my way. And I'm sure God laughed at that one because I had no idea what we were in for. In late July of 2022, on a Monday, my husband had a medical procedure. We were just waiting for those results to come back, and then 4 days later, he started having some lower abdominal pain. A trip to the ER confirmed a diverticulitis flare-up, and he was admitted. They did a CT scan and started him on IV antibiotics. 2 days later, the doctor ordered a repeat CT just to make sure nothing else was going on, and a few hours later, chaos broke loose. The surgical team swept in and said they had to take him to surgery straight away. Some polyps had ruptured, his abdominal cavity was filling with air, and they were probably going to have to do a colostomy, hopefully temporary. Our kids happened to be there visiting, and we pretty much just sat in shock as they took him away to surgery. There was no time to plan, no time to get our emotions or anything else in order, no time to mentally prepare for a life-changing procedure like a colostomy. I went into nurse mode, triage mode. Let's deal with one thing at a time. Most important things first. Are you in triage mode spiritually? Have you triaged your spiritual life, putting what's most important first? The surgeon removed a fairly large part of his colon. He had a colostomy bag, and I'll be honest, it was rough. Post-op day 2, I believe, the doctor came in, and although she hated to break it to us because she knew he was already emotionally and physically compromised, the procedure that he'd had on Monday Those results were back, and they were positive for cancer. There were a lot of tears that day, but one thing at a time, first things first. Let's deal with mastering this colostomy care, and we'll think about the cancer later. And looking back on it, that sounds odd to say that we'll think about the cancer later, because usually when the word cancer comes up in medical conversation, there's panic, there is an urgency, isn't there? I mean, you don't mess around with cancer. Do you feel an urgency in your life right now? An urgency that's telling you to get your spiritual house in order, to pray for those around you who don't know Jesus as their Savior, to literally get down on your knees and cry out to God, pleading with Him to intervene in the lives of those you love. 3 months later, in October, the second major surgery happened, the one to remove the cancer. I could talk for hours about that hospital stay, but I won't. I'll leave it with God was in control the entire time, even when it didn't feel like it. That second hospital stay was a spiritual eye-opener for me. That hospital stay taught me that even when everything that can go wrong does go wrong, God is in control and working all things together for the good of those who love Him. Have you had an eye-opening experience? Has anything ever happened that caused you to shift, to change your perspective, to open your spiritual eyes? Now, for us at this point, following the second surgery, we were just waiting for the colon reattachment that was scheduled for late April. Then, the day before Christmas Eve, my husband called me into his office. He had noticed a bulge in the groin area, and I couldn't believe it. He had an inguinal hernia, a pretty large one. I almost laughed. Seriously, I thought, what in the world is happening? Then in mid-January, we got a phone call, and I can't share the details, but there were many tears that night as well. Our hearts were hurting, and what we had been through, what my husband had been through, temporarily took a back seat to a different kind of pain, and all we could do was pray for peace and healing and wisdom for those involved. In late January, my husband underwent his third surgery in 6 months, and compared to everything else that had happened, that was an easy one. Now all that was left was the colostomy reversal. But a week or so before he was admitted, we got another phone call. And again, I can't get into the details on that one either. But after we hung up the phone, I broke down and I thought, how much more, Lord? And for a few minutes, I felt like I was going to break. And then I don't know, I just had a peace. I knew that with God's help, we could handle this too if we had to, and that it was going to be okay. And I knew He would give us the strength to go through whatever was going to happen. Because by this point, 3 surgeries later and all that had happened in between, I had on the full armor of God and I was sleeping with it on. I still do. I know better than to let my spiritual guard down again, because these struggles were not just physical struggles. There is a very real realm around us where a battle is going on, where Satan is trying to take us out. He is trying to make us doubt God's love for us. And I want you to listen to this young lady speak about struggles. She says, we have to know what this is really about. I'm doing all the right things, Lord, but what is going on? Take a listen.
So we have to know what this is really about. You know, the battles and the things that we go through, we think it's just about us. Lord, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. Why hasn't things, happened how I wanted them to, and things like that? Like, what's going on? I'm doing all the right things, Lord, what's going on? It's not about you. You got to understand, this is a spiritual battle about your faith. See, the enemy, he wants everybody to go to hell, just like he's about to go to hell, right? So him and his demons, they're trying to bring everybody to hell with them, y'all. That's why we have to have the armor of God on. Ephesians 6:10-18. Read it every day if you can, y'all. Understand that you have to put that armor of God on. God gave us the armor. He's not going to put it on for us, y'all. Know your opponent. If you know that there's a pattern that the enemy uses against you, pick up on it. Take it back to God and let the Lord equip you, y'all. There's so many things that the Lord has already given us. All we got to do is tap into it. And I'm speaking for myself too. That's why I say we, because we have to tap into these things, y'all. We have joy. We have fullness of joy. We have peace, that surpasses all understanding. These mind battles, depression, anxiety, all that stuff, nah. You got to tell that stuff no. Renounce it and get it out of there. Rebuke it in the name of Jesus and keep going, y'all. We cannot be victim to somebody who's already defeated. We cannot be defeated by somebody who's already defeated, y'all. We got to understand our power, the power that we have in God, y'all. So I just say all of that to say this, man. Put your war clothes on because it's a war. The only option is to live through it. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no giving up. Ain't no throwing in the towel because God gonna throw it right back. He gonna throw it right back. He didn't bring us this far just to bring us this far, y'all. It's a battle for your faith. Don't let the enemy steal that. Don't let him steal what God has put in you, y'all. Don't give up the fight. We got to fight the good fight. Fight the good fight. You got to pick up your cross, man. Pick up your cross and fight, man. Fight your way through it. Fight your way through it. You have everything you need to win every time because it's a spiritual thing. You're not fighting against people. You're not fighting against people. You're not fighting against the flesh. You fighting against the spirit. So you got to realize that and understand that we have the power. We can't be defeated by somebody who's already defeated, y'all. We have the victory. Tap into it.
I'm weak. Alone, I'm weak, and I can do nothing. The last year taught me that, and that's why 2 Corinthians 12:9 is my favorite verse. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Have you reached that point yet? The point when you know you can't do it on your own. The point where your entire being is depending on God to carry you through whatever is going to happen next. Because you're done. You can't do it on your own anymore, and you don't even want to try. It is a literal Jesus take the wheel kind of moment. So it's now the end of April. Colon reattachment went perfectly, and he was released from the hospital early. A couple months later, during one of his last follow-up visits with the surgeon, she and her staff gave him Captain America and Incredible Hulk stickers to wear. I have to smile at that because although my husband takes very good care of himself physically, I know it wasn't just a healthy lifestyle, resilience, and determination that got him through all that mess with flying colors and superhero stickers. It was divine intervention. It was God. And as far as that last phone call, after all those tests were completed, there wasn't anything to worry about after all. Looking back on those 9 months, it all seems like a bad dream, a 9-month-long bad dream, even though a lot of spiritual good did come from it. And it does seem like a lot, doesn't it? A lot of physical and emotional trauma for one man to go through in a short period of time, a lot for a family to go through. But it wasn't, not really, not compared to a man named Mark Waters, a man I read about Tuesday morning. In April 2001, he and his wife were in their Florida backyard with their 4-year-old son and 16-month-old daughter. They went inside after playing. Mark was in the living room with his son, thinking that their daughter was with his wife, but she wasn't. He then suddenly had the thought that their little girl had really been curious about the lake behind their house. He went running toward the water and saw her floating face down about 10 feet from shore. Their neighbor, an ex-Marine, ran over and immediately started CPR, but it was too late. He said, I could write 100 books and never adequately describe how I felt. I would only argue that this is the lowest point a human can reach during this lifetime. Once you reach that point, you never look at anything in life the same way again. He goes on to say what his bottom line is now that this experience is part of him. His life's number one goal is to lead his 2 sons to a saving faith in Jesus Christ. What else is there? 100 years from now, it won't matter whether they drove a tow truck or the space shuttle. They'll be dead, just like his daughter. The important question is, will they be in heaven? Last Sunday morning, our pastor continued our study of being different like Jesus. He said, we can remain in despair or we can choose hope. The verses covered were Philippians 3:1-11, but for me, the most impactful was verse 1. Finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord. The pastor shared Reverend Kelly Vanderwood's definition of rejoice. To rejoice in the Lord means we take delight in Him, not our circumstances. Now, I hadn't yet read about Mark Waters and the tragic death of his little girl, but our family had been through some challenges of our own in the last year. Because I finally gave it all to God, gave all my worry and scenarios of what ifs to Him, I was able to rejoice even in the turmoil of the last year. I chose hope. I didn't rejoice in my circumstances because Frankly, the circumstances were off the charts horrible, but I was at peace through it all. I know who I belong to. I know who my husband belongs to. And I knew if any one of his multiple health crises had taken a wrong turn, if the worst possible thing had happened, I knew he would be in the presence of Jesus. Mark Waters said that since his daughter died, as much as it hurts when he replays those events in his mind, he can live with that. He said, I can live the rest of my life here on earth without my precious little girl, and I can bear it. She's in heaven. That's a done deal, and not even Satan can take that away. What I can't bear is the thought of spending eternity without any one of my children. I love them too much not to devote my life to leading them toward a saving faith in Jesus Christ. In October of 21, I started writing my book, and I wrote this 49-day devotional because I felt God was calling me to do so. I didn't know one thing about getting a book published and very little about writing, and the thought of promoting my book in any way was a horrifying thought. But I wanted to write something that everyday people could relate to. I wanted to share my own thoughts, some family experiences, and some insight. But mostly, I wanted to share what God has done in my life, how He pulled me up from low self-esteem and a pretty unhappy childhood because of that to where I am now. I wanted to share the gospel with people in a practical way, one they could relate to. I wanted to share the plan of salvation. The primary goal of a Christian should be to bring others to Christ, because like Mark Waters said, when it's all said and done, what else is there? And in one of my first videos, Can I Know God's Purpose for Me, which I'll link here, I talk about a few experiences that led me to starting a Christian YouTube channel. Was that easy for me? No. Putting my face on camera doing Christian video devotions was terrifying. After all, who am I? Now, I want you to listen to this short clip from Glenn Beck talking about an encounter he had with Billy Graham about 5 years before he died. In it, he asks, where are the people that are going to step up? Where is the next Billy Graham? Listen to what Billy Graham told him.
Something that Billy Graham told me about 5 years before he died. And at one point, I said, Billy, where are the people that are going to step up? Where's the next George Washington, Abraham Lincoln? Where's the next Billy Graham? And he smiled and he said, God is tired of people like me getting credit for his work. He said, it's not going to work this way this time. He said, this time, people who are just regular people are going to do something that they may think is small and insignificant. And they may not even understand it, but they feel compelled that they're supposed to do this one thing, and they'll argue in their own head, say, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? That's not going to change anything. And he said, and if everybody who hears what they're supposed to do and does just that, nothing more, nothing less, just that, and remains faithful, he said, the lights will come on and you'll see a mosaic that God is working, and everyone on earth will know only the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob could have done it.
Not one of us is promised tomorrow, and in 100 years, all the stuff we're focused on right now, politics, masks, mandates, fires all over the world, natural disasters, all the stuff that is causing sleepless nights, anxiety, and worry won't mean a thing. The only thing that will matter is where you will spend eternity. If you're already a Christian and you're going through what seems like too much, I know how you feel. I'm sure it's how Joseph felt in the Old Testament. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers, and then he was thrown into prison for something that he didn't even do. Long story short, he persevered. He allowed God to be in control. He continued having faith. He continued having integrity, and he became second only to Pharaoh in Egypt. When finally face to face with his brothers again after many years, he said, "But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Satan means everything for evil, and he'll stop at nothing to destroy your family, destroy your faith. But the book of James tells us, therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. When Satan sees that he can't destroy your faith, can't destroy your family, can't destroy your hope in Jesus, he'll flee. Now, that doesn't mean he won't come back later to tempt you again, but don't give up. In Romans 5, Paul writes, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. And not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. That's a tough one, being told to glory in tribulations, even if the tribulations will bring about perseverance, character, and hope. The bottom line, something is coming. One day, death will come for all of us, unless the rapture takes place first. In Exodus, God promised Moses that when he saw the blood covering the doorposts, he would pass over the Israelites, and that the plague of death would not destroy them. Are you covered in his blood? Are you ready to meet Jesus?